Welcome to my listening session. This reading is from Pleasure of the Chase. Location, Beatty, Nevada. The call Nellie had been waiting for came the next day at 9 a.m. Her contact had told her weeks ago that Honda was planning a photo shoot for its brand new, yet-to-be-named SUV. She'd learned the shoot was happening the next day, Monday. So Nellie hit the road for Beatty, Nevada. Beatty was the gateway to Death Valley, one of the most popular hot weather testing areas in the world, especially among many of the Japanese manufacturers, Toyota being the exception. The Japanese were the most secretive about their new releases, often loading cars into huge trucks, driving them to the locations, and then loading them back onto the trucks for return to the manufacturing facility once the test or photo shoot was concluded. Catching a photo of a Honda prototype was never an accident. Nellie would never see one randomly parked car outside a fast food joint or motel. She had to know exactly where the event was occurring. In this case, she'd learned the new SUV would be photographed for its promotional launch off State Route 90 past Salt Creek. At the beginning of her career as a photographer, before people knew who she was, she'd blended in with the other attendees at various events and snapped a few pictures with her tiny Minox camera. Now most of the manufacturers recognized her, and she was forced to hide in the desert shrubs across the road. She didn't mind, although her back did. Still, a stationary target was always preferable to one moving at 80 miles an hour. Over the years, she and Willie had culled together a network of informants in various parts of the world. Her contact in the town of Beatty was Caress, the bartender at the Sourdough Saloon. Caress had heard two of the engineers talking about the photo shoot, and although they spoke in whispers, her hearing was exceptional. Caress lived up to her name, and Nellie enjoyed her comfort any time she visited Beatty. She cracked a smile, remembering how good Caress could make her feel, physically and spiritually. No one loved women, all women, the way Caress did. She shifted in the Jeep's bucket seat, already horny and still a few miles away. Her thoughts drifted to the chance meeting with Joss Grant. For the last year, she'd wondered who'd bested her and received the Adopt-a-Highway stretch right outside the Toyota Proving Ground. Periodically, Nellie would stroll out to the highway, hoping to see the adopter and quell her curiosity. But she'd never seen anyone until last weekend. The sign that went up had been somewhat cryptic, Troop 305. A Google search yielded nothing. There was no way to contact the adopters and possibly convince them to transfer the rights to her. Joss had to have known someone who worked at the Department of Transportation, someone who filed her paperwork the minute the stretch of road became available. Nellie guessed that if Joss showed up in that pink tank top, female and male workers would have fallen all over themselves to make her happy. Nellie had wanted the Adopt-a-Highway stretch for a cover story, although the blind Willie built on the acreage had yielded more good pictures over the years. Standing on the side of the road, inches from a new car, would definitely be better. But to linger on the highway for any length of time meant she needed a good reason. Adopting the highway would have given her the reason when Toyota security questioned her, which certainly would have happened the first time a prototype turned onto the highway. She laughed, thinking about Joss and her horde of Girl Scouts. She remembered Joss's blush when her daughter divulged that she was single. Her rosy cheeks matched her rich red lips, perfectly kissable and soft. Nellie was a toucher. It was her form of flirting. She'd squeeze a shoulder, play with a lock of hair, or boldly invade a woman's personal space if the possibility of a kiss existed. The chain-link fence between them had tempered her urges. A good thing, since she wasn't interested in anything serious, especially with a woman who had at least 2 children, Bridget and a brother named Miles. Still, there had been a spark between them. It seemed odd to Nellie that they'd never met before. Yet in the past few weeks, they'd run into each other twice. Perhaps fate was sending a message. Other than the single embarrassing moment caused by her daughter, Nellie had felt at ease with Joss. She pictured the two of them riding Nellie's horses, Smoky and Blue, around the ranch, laughing and talking. She shook her head as an odd thought came to her. A friendship? She didn't have any female friends, only lovers and contacts. The few times she'd attempted to be friends with a woman, it hadn't gone well. She either ruined it by constantly breaking promises because of her job, or she seduced the woman and altered the relationship permanently. She thought, thinking of Joss, maybe I will call her. Yet as she made the turn to Beatty, she felt her urge growing. Caress was less than 5 miles away. Nellie equated driving with sex. Her libido was the ignition, and it never took much to turn her on. Knowing what her partner needed was the same as shifting gears. She had to know when. The hum of the engine was the parts working together. That was the formula for great chemistry in bed. Her mind drifted to Joss's rear end as she boarded the helicopter, the gentle sway of her hips suggesting she knew how to find the right rhythm. Nellie looked down at the speedometer. She was going 90. She eased up on the gas and took a long sip of water. She needed to cool down. She pulled up in front of the Sourdough Saloon. 2 vehicles sat in the lot. One of them was Caress's old Cadillac. She'd always said a big woman needed a big car. The inside of the saloon was a fire marshal's nightmare. The walls and ceiling were plastered with dollar bills and car parts from every manufacturer in the world. It was customary for new visitors to leave a calling card in the form of a signed dollar bill, and car makers routinely donated a part of a new model to be displayed. Grills, fenders, and doors took up every inch of wall and ceiling space. Nellie's gaze settled on the light blue Mustang door, her favorite. Caress was behind the bar, drying glasses, laughing with Jake, an old-timer with an ancient face and an expensive cowboy hat. Most women who weighed 300 pounds wouldn't wear leather pants and a matching leather vest without a blouse underneath. But Caress was not an average woman. Leather was her regular attire, and her enormous cleavage was often a topic of gossip among bar patrons, gossip that Caress encouraged and fueled. She flirted with everyone, male or female, but they all knew she was a lesbian, one who didn't shy away from giving her lover of the moment a boob grope or a slap on the ass in public. Consequently, Caress's tips had topped 4 figures recently, enough to buy a new house. When she saw Nellie, she stopped her story in mid-sentence and flew around the bar. The crushing hug was followed by a sizzling kiss, which only heightened Nellie's awareness of her physical need. When Caress cupped her left buttock, she sighed. I guess you missed me. Her voice was breathy and smooth. It was like that with Caress. Her genuine magnetic smile attracted people. Some wanted her sexually, and others just wanted a hug. Her spiky maroon hair and a connect-the-dots tattoo of a giraffe on her left breast were often conversation starters. When a female stranger asked about the unusual tattoo, if Caress fancied her, she would hand her an erasable marker. While the woman drew, Caress often made suggestive jokes. If the woman found the game seductive, they usually went home together. Nellie had found it seductive. When can you leave? She whispered. Caress smiled. Any time, honey. I was waiting for you. Jake's on today, she said loudly. The cowboy lifted his glass in salute and downed the rest of his whiskey before returning behind the bar. Let's get out of here, she said, once again reeling Nellie in with her smile. You haven't seen my new place. That concludes this listening session. I hope you'll enjoy some of my other recordings, subscribe to my channel, and visit my website, annroberts.net.